Hey, come over here. I've got something to show you. Lemon yellow. A semi-opaque yellow with a bias toward green. This cool yellow makes a bright green when mixed with cobalt teal or cerulean blue, and a mid-green when combined with a warm blue like ultramarine. Add purple to dull. Lemon yellow is the color of miniatures, like the paper wasp that has no concept of personal space, or the honeybee who can only sting once. It's also the color of the morning glow in my bedroom at 23 Grove Street in Greenwich Village, where I lived in my mid-20s. My room was so small that I could lie in bed and turn the doorknob with my toes. I remember the view of a brick wall, the smell of rum from the men downstairs, and the miniature kitchen humming with the pertness of yellow things. Chilled pulp, a clattering steam pipe, and bones gnawed clean. I think of the yellow dress in Paul Gauguin's Breton Woman in Prayer, 1894. Her hair tells two stories. One side drops with the plum of moral rectitude, but the other flips in rebellion. Rebellious behavior not only garners attention, but enables us to escape demanding situations, like the schoolchild who, when asked to solve a math problem on the chalkboard, has a tantrum. In this case, the teacher moves on to another student. Problem solved, prayer answered. Gauguin is saying the same thing that Mary Poppins did. I hate being good. He's telling us to never grow old, like the boy wearing wax lips in the family portrait, or the girl who refuses to be silenced, with lemon yellow leaves lapping her drumming feet and the steam pipe's clanking heart. Back in episode 69, I started showing you the rumblings of a new body of work. That was 6 months ago. Now that show is complete, and I have 11 brand new paintings for my 65th solo exhibition. God, I'm old. The show, called The Pond, will open on February 27th, 2020 at Forum Gallery here in New York City. I can't tell if this is some of my best work to date, or if it's pure suck. What I am sure of is that I have completely given up a fear of failure, because I don't even remember painting these pictures. It was like a 6-month fever dream. 2 young fish were swimming upstream when they encountered an old fish. The old fish said, "How's the water, kids?" Later, as the 2 young fish continued their swim upstream, one turned to the other and said, "What the hell is water?" As with every show, the last thing I do before the paintings leave my studio is write a statement. Writing about your work is very important because it's easy to overlook the obvious stuff right in front of you. A few words directly from the artist can give the viewer deeper insights into the ideas and process that shaped the paintings. It's hip to claim that your work will speak for itself, but it won't. You have to help it. Write about your work. I start by going to Penguin House. Not the publisher, but the actual Penguin House at the Central Park Zoo. I do a lot of writing in there because it's cold, damp, and smells like penguin ass, which keeps me succinct. Here's my statement. The Pond. Humidity made me a painter. All of these new paintings are meditations on an imaginary pond as seen through veils of South Carolina low-country heat. The oval has been a primary shape in my work for 44 years. My first paintings were watercolors of a pond near my childhood home in Myrtle Beach, where I spent a lot of time because I had buck teeth and was horrible at sports. Little did I know, the directness and simplicity of those studies would provide me with a lifetime of imagery. Everything I'm trying to do in my paintings is embodied in the solitary act of viewing a pond. Foreground is close, my sneakers on the muddy bank. Middle ground is the protective gelatin of water. Background is far away. Content is a function of how near or far away things appear from your face. As I walk around to the other side, that which was hidden becomes visible. Likewise, a painting doesn't reveal itself all at once, but in flecks of partial recognition. I love parades and processionals for this reason. A processional abandons its starting point. Travel eliminates its origins. We are where we go. I paint because I can never see enough places, so I return to one. My movement becomes a pond, the pond becomes a thought, and the thought returns me to the wealth of humidity. When I start a painting, one of the first things I establish is the fifth line. Your first mark on a blank canvas is really your fifth mark. The two sides, top and bottom, constitute the first four lines. But it's not until you make that gorgeous, radiant fifth line that the painting takes life. That fifth line connects you to the entirety of art history, because with that mark, you suggest a figure in space. That mark has never been made before and will never exist again. It's the last of its kind. Cherish it. Inhabit it. Walk around in it, because every mark that comes after is a response, not a declaration. Picasso taught me the value of leaving one straight line in every painting. Doesn't matter if it's a figure or landscape, realist or abstracted. Having one straight line connects the image to the stretcher. It allows the painting to inhale and exhale, always relating to the four sides. As my old pal, the poet Samuel Menashe, wrote, "A pot poured out fulfills its spout." In other words, the inside takes the shape of the outside, with no room left over. If there's wiggle room between the painted world and the real world, then you're doomed. That's the difference between merely painting a picture and manufacturing a state of lucidity. The best painters do the latter. The four sides aren't a border. They are integral parts of the whole field. Every decision counts. My teacher used to say that a painting is like a circus tent. It appears substantial, but it's really cloth stretched over thin wooden sticks. There is always the feeling of its inevitable dismantling. I was recently asked, "Brian, how do you know when the painting is finished?" I said, "Can we please just finish the prostate exam?" I live in Manhattan. A favorite Sunday ritual of New Yorkers is to have brunch and then go to random open houses. Not because we want to move, but so that we can feel good about our own apartments. Katie and I do this often, so we register with fake names. I'm Girth Brooks, and Katie is Gale Force. After registering, we blithely wander from room to room. It's a fine analogy for painting. Everything looks sort of familiar, but alien at the same time. The sunlight comes from a different direction. There are strange smells. Is it broccoli or furniture polish? And you don't know what's around the corner. All you can be certain of is where you're standing at that moment. The author Gertrude Stein said, "We write for ourselves and for strangers." I suppose the same is true for us. We paint for ourselves and for strangers. When a stranger looks at my painting, I don't want him or her to feel as if they're looking at a landscape, but as if they've been spun around and inhabit the world in the painting, the contours and dimensions of which supply everything they need to have an experience. Nothing extra. I learned this from studying Honoré Daumier's figures, who inhabit a world defined by the limitations of their gestures. In other words, art gives us all we need, thus releasing us from the torment of inadequacy. You don't need a degree in theoretical constructs to look. All you need are 2 eyeballs and an open mind. If painters do their job well, then everything is enough. The historian David Sylvester likens it to when you thrust at your arm and feel the muscular tension along it, you aren't mindful of the length of your fingernails. An eye not told what to see sees more. You're wondering why I'm sitting here in the dark. I do this when I've finished a new group of paintings. Pointing a beam of light at a painting makes the familiar appear alien. I no longer recognize it. It's like shining a flashlight into the woods at night. You don't see the big picture, but a single point in space. Painting is like this. It's not a map of the entire landscape, but of the path you took to get to this place. I'm always a little embarrassed when looking at a painting, because the feelings I thought were my own are really those of someone else. I recognize them. That's what great art does. It makes us recognize what we've never seen before. Everything has been done, just not by you. If your work is to have integrity, it must come from the inside. Communicate something about your experience. And it doesn't have to be a pompous paradox hidden in a post-structural labyrinth. An artist should never be the smartest person in the room. I never am. I've been painting for 45 years, but I'd much rather hang out with an irrational plumber than a rational artist. Painters constantly slip back and forth between rational and irrational thought. I don't mean irrational like, why did kamikazes wear helmets? But, for instance, how do painters use light and shadow to suggest the rational and irrational? In the 15th century, Renaissance painters favored a single rational light source, which, coupled with linear perspective, appeared natural. It looked just like the real thing. In the 16th and 17th centuries, both Caravaggio and Rembrandt used light issued from above or from the side to create a sense of mystery by referencing the unseen. But it was still rational because the shadows suggested a single light source. In the 19th century, French Impressionists moved away from rational light to an irrational, all-over light that flickers and bounces off surfaces. That's why the Impressionists painted landscapes, not to suggest the felt sensations of symbolic light, but to capture the optical effects of visible light. When you eliminate linear perspective and a single light source, the painting is no longer a window that you gaze into, but a grid onto which the artist registers sensations and emotions like arranging colored silks on a chain-link fence and then stepping back to view the entire sequence. Art requires us to slip from rational to irrational thought. Claude Monet painted haystacks and cathedrals not because they were pretty to look at, but because they provided blank forms onto which he could register his emotions. By choosing to paint the facade of Rouen Cathedral, he examined flatness by painting something that was already flat. In other words, there was no gap between the subject, the facade, and the object, the flat canvas. They must be the same thing. If there is any gap between your intent and execution, then the painting won't hum. I've sat in front of Rouen Cathedral, and I imagined Monet with sore knees and coffee breath, setting up his canvases in the morning. He painted on one canvas from 8 to 9, then another from 9 to 10, and so on, over 30 in total. I'm sure his dirtball friend said, "Claude, babe, come on, do something else. Tape a banana to a wall." But they were wrong. By painting one place over and over again, Monet was painting all places. One place, fully grasped, allows us to grasp all places. Whenever I look at Monet, I think of my mentor, the late British painter Michael Tyzack from the College of Charleston. Michael lived from 1933 to 2007, and he was a member of the 56 Group Wales, who played a significant role in British non-objective painting in the 1950s and 60s. They painted rational, intelligent pictures. But in 1960, 5 years before I was born, Michael did something irrational. He was 27 years old, fresh out of London's Slade School of Art, and he drank a bottle of Chianti with his new bride, Patsy. Then he stuffed a canvas and some paints and brushes into his knapsack and illegally climbed the wall at Monet's home and garden in Giverny. He painted one picture. I'm proud to say that I own it. It was the only landscape Michael ever painted. Tyzack painted Monet's garden for the same reason that I suspect Monet did. Not as a love letter to gardens, but as a fuck you to walls. Never, ever tell a painter no. That word is simply not in our vocabulary. There comes a time in every painter's life in which you must claim yes. Then simply let it kill you. Ask yourself, am I a witness or a judge? By judge, I don't mean a justice or magistrate whose role it is to uphold and interpret the law, but a decider who inserts a gap between the painting and the viewer by using paint in the service of outside messages. They pile meaning onto that which is already meaningful. Galleries are overflowing with paintings begging to be understood. They ask us to think before we feel. The content should be embedded in the paint itself. Every thought begins as a feeling. Climbing the wall tells me that Tyzack was a witness. When you look at a painting, you bear witness to someone else's experience. When you bring yourself to something that exists separate from yourself, you make contact with otherness. All great art puts us in this state of poetic externalization because we bear witness to the artist overhearing him or herself in the moment of creation, as if the work is being created as we look at it. Art teaches us to be our best selves. Sometimes it's okay to listen without speaking and look without judging. Looking and listening don't produce skill. They are themselves skills. Observation is a sign of respect.